Hiya. Okay, so this is video 4 of 5 of key area 2, so about communication, control and communication, and it is on hormones. As a reminder, the last 3 videos, they were all on nervous control, so these next 2 videos are about hormonal control, so the other type of system that is regulating stuff inside of our bodies. To remind you of features of nervous control are things like rapid communication across the body, very, very fast signals, electrical signals, whereas hormonal control has some differences. Common exam question is things like describe a difference between the speed of nervous signals compared to hormone signals or something like that. So that's things to watch out for during this PowerPoint.
Okay, so again, here's the course specification on this stuff. Similar to the last one, the first point is actually much shorter and there's less knowledge in it than in the second point. So what we're going to look at that first point in this video, which is just the idea of what endocrine glands are and what they do and the role of hormones, with a few specific examples. And in the next video, we're going to look more specifically at blood glucose regulation, which is one of the ones that people find the hardest thing in Nat5 because it just has a lot of similar words in it.
Yeah. Okay, so the order, we're going to look at the endocrine system, we're going to look at hormones and why they're important, how hormones work with specific cells, and then the next video is about that last point, how we regulate blood glucose levels. So this one, we're looking about what hormones are and how they work in our body.
So by the end of this video, you should be able to state what a hormone is, you should be able to state what produces hormones, you should be able to name the hormones that are produced by the pancreas, the testes and the ovaries, you should be able to state how a hormone travels through the body and describe how a hormone targets a specific tissue.
Okay, so the endocrine system. Now, the endocrine system is the body system responsible for producing and releasing hormones into the bloodstream. If we remember back from key area 1, where we're looking at cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems, the endocrine system is the name of a body system that's endocrine glands all working together to produce and release hormones into the bloodstream to regulate stuff inside your body. Okay, now that is an exam question that crops up every now and then. It says, what organ system are hormones part of? So you need to know hormones are part of the endocrine system. The endocrine system, these are features of it. It transmits signals a lot more slowly than the nervous system. Nervous system, boom, fast, very, very quick. Endocrine system, much more slowly, but the effects can last a lot longer than the nervous system. Okay, so those are 2 features that are different to the nervous system. 1, slower signals. 2, much longer signals. These signals can last for months if they need to.
Okay, there are 3 main endocrine glands that you must know. You must know the male reproductive and the female reproductive ones. So the idea that the testes are the male reproductive organs, the idea that the ovaries are the female reproductive organs or glands, and you must know about the pancreas as well. And there are certain hormones associated with each of these. And actually, we will talk about each of these hormones as we go on into later topics. But the pancreas in general is to do with insulin and glucagon. Your ovaries are to do with estrogen and your testes are to do with testosterone. Other than that, you don't need to know any more. There will often be other ones named. You might see textbooks, examples, online stuff where other ones are named or labelled. Ignore them. They are irrelevant. Testes, ovaries, pancreas, if it's not to do with them, doesn't matter.
They're just the 3 endocrine glands that the SQA wants you to be aware of. The testes and ovaries also do things that are not endocrine glands, but they also make the hormones, so they're also classed as endocrine glands. So hormones are a type of protein. Remember how we looked back at protein types in key area 4 for the proteins key area? Hormones are a type of protein. They are known as chemical messengers that travel in the blood. So again, if the SQA asks you what are hormones, you have to say chemical messengers that travel in the blood. If you just say chemicals, no points. If you just say messengers, no points. Has to be chemical messengers that travel in the blood.
And that's another question that comes up in exams when it says talk about comparing nervous and hormonal control, is that hormonal control is chemical messengers, whereas nervous control is electrical signals.
Hormones down nerves, electrical signals in the blood.
You've just done that the wrong way around.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh yes, I did. Sorry.
Hormones are in the blood. Electrical signals are down nerves.
I'm tired. It's Sunday. I'm tired. Okay. So remember, an endocrine gland is a gland that releases a hormone, i.e. the pancreas is an endocrine gland. Okay, so its hormones are released by endocrine glands and hormones travel in the bloodstream.
Okay, so here are some examples of hormones. You do not need to know these, but it's just so as you're slightly more aware of things that happen. So growth hormone, very common hormone, does what it says on the tin. testosterone and estrogen, these are your reproductive ones. These we will touch on tiny bit more. If you go into higher human, you will touch on them a lot
more. Ooh.
But they're the ones to do with your testes and your ovaries. Adrenaline, you will have all heard of that. The idea of people who are adrenaline junkies, they just love to do things that make their adrenaline go really high. It's another hormone. Insulin, which is the thing we're going to talk about more in the next video. That's the one that people who are diabetic, they maybe don't produce it, or if they're type 2 diabetic, they become a bit insensitive to it. And
okay, so we're next going to look at how hormones work. Now, a hormone is released into the blood, and you've got blood going through your whole body, okay? That same blood, so say I get a hormone released out of my pancreas, it goes all through my body, all through my brain, all through my skin, everything. How do I stop that hormone activating my brain if it's not supposed to? So let's take an example of adrenaline. Adrenaline is supposed to raise your heart rate, and it's supposed to bind to muscle cells. So how do we stop hormones, or like adrenaline, from activating my brain and causing my brain to go massively firing and not function properly anymore? And the answer for that is they travel to target tissues, okay? So as they're floating through the blood, they will only bind to specific target tissues. So adrenaline has got something about it where it will not bind to brain tissue. Instead, it binds only to muscular type tissue. That's kind of lying there a little bit, but I'm just trying to give you an example.
Okay, so each target tissue, and this is when it's a bit like enzymes, it's the idea that they have complementary receptor proteins. So on each target tissue, there will be a complementary receptor, a bit like a matching piece of a jigsaw that says, I will only match to this specific hormone. So if it wants that hormone to interact with it, it will have the complementary receptor protein on the surface of that target tissue so as it can bind. If that complementary receptor protein is not there, that hormone cannot bind, therefore it will have nothing to do with it.
Okay. Now, not every cell type has a receptor for every hormone. So, for example, only cells in the uterus or womb will have receptors for estrogen. So you will not find estrogen receptors on muscle or bone or things like that. The idea is the hormone cannot interact with that cell.
Okay, so in terms of how hormones work, we've kind of just touched on it. When a hormone actually binds to a receptor, so again, it won't do a job until it binds to its complementary receptor. When it's just floating in the blood, that's all it's doing. It's floating in the blood, it's not doing a job. But as soon as it binds to its complementary receptor, that's when a response can occur. And all hormones have different responses. Again, we'll touch on a few in the next couple of videos in terms of pancreatic hormones. But all hormones have different responses. The tissue can only be affected by that hormone, so that response can only occur in that tissue if there is the correct receptor protein for that hormone to bind to. So like this diagram shows, the target cell on the left only has receptors for hormone A, so it can only have hormone A interact with it. The one on the far right only has receptors for hormone B, so it can only have that hormone interact with it, whereas the one in the middle has receptors for both, so both of them can interact and both of them can have a response in that cell.
Okay, so to summarize, that's everything you need to know about hormones. So hormones are a chemical messenger that travels in the bloodstream.
An endocrine gland is a type of gland that releases a hormone.
The endocrine system is the system of organs and endocrine glands that controls the release of hormones throughout the body.
And a hormone receptor is that complementary receptor found on the surface of a cell, which would be the target tissue. So it's always on the surface. If that cell wants that specific hormone, it will have the complementary receptor.
Okay, so you should be able to state what a hormone is. You should be able to now say what produces hormones. These three hormones, it's mainly the pancreas, testes, and ovaries. It's a little bit of a research if you want to get through that one. You should be able to state how hormones travel through the body and be able to explain how that's different from nervous tissue. And you should be able to describe how a hormone targets a specific tissue, and that's through the complementary receptor relationship. The next video, we're going to look at one particular example that the SQA want you to know, and that is about how blood glucose is regulated using hormones. So we'll see you then.
Enjoy.